mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 5, Episode 3 of Sky's Gomorrah. Like I mentioned in the videos for Episodes 1 and 2, Episode 1 kind of wrapped up a lot of loose threads from Season 4, kind of, introduced us to some of the players for Season 5. It was kind of like a setup episode. Episode 2 kind of reestablished Shiro's place within this entire dynamic. We got a really good episode with him and being put in that gulag and getting out. And now they've kind of set him up as what I think is probably going to be the primary antagonist for Gennaro in the rest of this season and to finish out the show. Episode 3 here, I think was kind of meant to set up this new character, Federico, who I feel is probably going to end up being a major player throughout the rest of the season as well. I think I read somewhere that one of the creators of the show said something to the effect of like, he's going to play a big role and you're going to go back and forth between liking him and hating him. And this episode kind of set up who he was, what kind of person this is, what kind of moves he's going to make. And that's kind of what this episode was. It was another solid episode that told a solid story. Nothing really too earth-shattering happened here, but it was still a really good episode, really entertaining. I love the kind of like bait and switch move that Jenny did with acquiring is an interesting word, the Levante shipment, and a couple of other things I'm going to get into in a moment. But first I want to start by kind of going over what my plan is going to be for coverage of this final season of Gomorrah, because now I have a much better idea of the way they're releasing the episodes and how I'm going to be getting them and how I'm going to be fitting them into my schedule, because I didn't really know that starting out, because I knew when it came out, but I knew it was only going to be out in Italy, and I didn't know how that was going to affect how I might be able to get the episodes here in the States, because I know HBO Max probably isn't going to have them for quite some time, and as big of a fan of the show as I am, I wasn't going to wait for that. So the way this is going to work out, and I'll probably say this again at the top of my video for episode 4, they're releasing the episodes, two episodes a week, which I did not anticipate happening. They come out on Fridays, 2 episodes a week. So we're only going to have, and this is only a 10-episode season, so we're only going to have 5 weeks here of Gomorrah to finish out the series. I've already got videos up for 1 and 2. I've watched 3 and 4, so I'm going to record videos for 3 and 4. And then I also recently got episodes 5 and 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to watch the episodes over the weekend. So, like I mentioned, they air on Fridays. I can usually grab really good copies with subtitles sometime on Saturday. So I'm probably going to spend Saturday and Sunday trying to find time to fit in watching those episodes. And then I'm probably going to put them up on the channel, put the videos up probably Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, something like that. Because the Sunday, Monday block is a heavy coverage day for me. And I figure, there's really no need to rush these videos, because right now they're only airing in Italy. They're not even airing here in the States. So, these videos are going to have a long run of time in which people are going to watch them, as opposed to like Succession, which I cover. People watch Succession on Sunday. I need to get those videos up as quickly as possible so that I can get as much usage out of them as far as views go before they start to die down. So that's going to be the plan. I'd say, today is Saturday, December 4th. I'm going to record and edit and release these videos for episodes 3 and 4 today. And then I would say for episodes 5 and 6, check for those probably Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. So that's the plan for that. As onto the episode, so what I mentioned about Federico. So we meet him after the police raid several spots. We see them raid one spot in particular, but when Federico has a conversation with his brother, Cosimo, who runs from the raid that we see, we find out that the police hit multiple spots. And Federico, with this bowl haircut, follows up the graduate, as I called him, Flanders, as this weird casting of like these really non-intimidating looking gangsters. Like, Graduate looked like Flanders. Federico looks like an older version of like fucking Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber. Like, really weird looking guy, right? But like I said, this episode establishes him. So we follow him to meet with his crew. And we learn two things. One, we learn that the crew is dissatisfied with the Levantes. They're not paying well. They seem to be in a bit of a drought. People are getting arrested. The Levantes aren't paying for lawyers. That costs money. And they seem very unhappy and kind of like longing for the days of the Savastano rule. And then we also learned that Federico is the only person with the balls to actually go speak on their behalf to the Levantes. So he does that, and he essentially asks for them to continue to pay, but to shut down the spots for a couple of weeks until they get their next shipment, which they say is going to be in 2 weeks. And then in an interesting moment, at the end of this conversation, the sister, Grazia, I think it actually is in the Italian subtitles, Grazia, she walks by, and she's still looking like she's been crying ever since the rest of the family got killed in season 4. But, she walks through, and they introduce her to Federico. That's it. And then Federico leaves. And when I was watching that, it gave me the feeling of when they introduced Apollonia to Michael Corleone in the second Godfather movie. It's like he's kind of like almost struck. He's not, there's no almost, he's like awestruck by her. And eventually they end up getting married. So for that little offhand, like kind of like, oh, by the way, here's our sister. Okay, hi. And then leaves, like, immediately I was like, they're going to get married. I don't know why, but like I said, well, I do know why. It mirrored the Godfather scene. And sure enough, after the Levantes agreed to do the payment, but not to shut down the spots, they also offer up Grazia as to marry Federico and kind of like combine their families, which is a smart move because now they have a bond. Like, I mean, we've seen it in like my fucking back itches. We've seen it in like The Godfather and a lot of other properties too, where they like to marry their families so that they can consolidate power. And it's a strong move, not just for the consolidation of power, but to kind of like shore up the confidence and the allegiance that they have with this crew, who obviously is feeling a little unsure of how they feel about the Levante. So now this can kind of like, it's a good faith move to offer the money, and then the marriage actually is just kind of like the icing on the cake, essentially. So the Levante kind of play everything right here, but they fail to account for Gennaro. So we see Jenny also make another move on the Levantes after the failed cemetery hit. He decides that he wants to get their shipment. The shipment that we hear them tell Federico is going to arrive in 2 weeks. So Jenny goes to reach out to this guy, Igor, who appears to be like somebody who he appears to be like a Coke Connect, but not the Levantes Connect. He's just like they call him a broker in the subtitles. And Jenny asks him, to find out, get information on the Levante shipment. He's kind of like, no, we don't really step on each other's toes. And Jenny gives like a very mild threat, kind of just like, hey, it's wise to be my friend. And he goes, all right. He's very easily convinced. And I feel like if you're already willing to say no to Gennaro Savastano up front, you should not be that easily swayed. Like, I'd be that easily swayed, but I wouldn't say no up front either. But he eventually agrees, and later Jenny gets the information. We don't know at the time what information he gets, but he gets some paper, and we can assume that he's got some information. So then he later meets with this guy. He called himself the Gentleman, and an older dude. They meet in what's actually a very nice shot, by the way. And essentially Jenny says, get me the Levante shipment, and you can be down with us, essentially. And the guy makes this whole speech about how he's a man of his word and all this kind of stuff, and basically says no. And Jenny kind of says, it's going to be one world later, and I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to be determine who lives and dies in it. And in a in a move that I can only describe as mind blowing, this guy whips his dick out and like pees across this kind of like pees like a line across between him and Gennaro, and he says something like, your world ends here, which is a hard-ass thing to say, but I don't know. This was the second time in this episode that somebody spoke to Gennaro like they didn't know who the fuck he was. Federico has a moment like that earlier, but I'm going to talk about the Federico thing in a minute because I want to tie it into something else. But he does this little, this pee thing, and I'm like, okay, well, this guy's going to be good as dead. This guy's going to be good as dead anytime soon. And that's what happens. And what Jenny ends up doing is he does a nice little plan, which this is probably my favorite part of the episode, is seeing how this plan plays out, which, like I tell you guys, every time I do a video about Gomorrah, I love how they show you a bunch of things that don't make sense. And then then later they bring it all together. So you go, oh, that's what that meant when it was happening earlier. And I love that about this show. And I've mentioned it many times, but another aspect of why I love that so much is that now it almost makes me comfortable in the storytelling. Because I could be watching something and go, I have no idea what's going on right now. But now, before it would be like a thing where like, oh, okay, I'll probably find out later. Maybe I'll find out later. Maybe this isn't meant to make sense. Now I look at it like, I don't know what's going on, but I know that I will when they're ready for me to know. And it's a weird kind of comfort in knowing that the show is written so well that even when you feel like it might be about to fail you, you can just go, yeah, it'll be fine, because they have a 100% track record as far as not failing me goes. So they play out this sequence where they have apparently the shipment is in like fruit boxes of fruit that are being delivered to like some market or something like that. And they have a police car, or I think they called it like the tax police or something like that, pull this truck into what looks like an area for customs. And immediately I was like, no, like he just like the whole episode, Jenny's been asking about the Levante shipment. This is pretty clearly the Levante shipment. He was given the finger on multiple occasions for this. Like, he's not just going to walk away. Like, they're not just going to, like, and I even put in my notes, like, this probably isn't the actual police. It's probably Gennaro. And sure enough, it wasn't the actual police. It was Gennaro and Maestral, and they, I hate that I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, but they do a nice little thing where they take the coke, they swap it out, and send an empty van back to the gentleman, and then they attempt to leave with the stash, with the coke. And the gentleman catches on real quick that it's probably Gennaro that's behind it, sends the guys after him. They find the van. They almost chase it down until they get T-boned by Gennaro driving a truck. So it was a nice little plan that he had worked out there. And now he's essentially escaped with the shipment that the Levantes just promised Federico was going to essentially solve all their problems. Like, hey, just give us 2 weeks. We got some great coke coming in. We got a ton. Everything's going to be smooth. Tell your crew to chill out. Now they're not going to have that coke. So pretty ballsy move by Jenny. But why wouldn't he? What's he got to be scared of? So kind of cycling back to Federico, after he, meets with the Levantes to, voice their displeasure and offer up this deal, he then later meets with Gennaro. And I'm making it sound like it was a one-on-one meeting. It wasn't, but Gennaro goes back to his old spots, and we see a shot that for me it was a big deal, because a long time ago I started doing this thing where I was like constantly refreshing Google search results for information on season 5 of the show. And really early on, I want to say February, I don't even think it was February this year. It might have been February last year. But there's an old article from Variety, and it's the first article of anything having to do, and it even says like first look at Gomorrah season 5, and it has a shot of Gennaro and Maestral and that blue fucking jacket he wears, and that shot is in this scene. This scene is that shot. So it was kind of cool, because I'd seen that picture now, because I was constantly refreshing over all this time in between seasons, constantly refreshing, waiting for more information, and it was nice to see like, oh, this is literally the scene from the picture that I've seen 8 million times. But this was the first instance of somebody talking to Jenny like they didn't know who the fuck he was, because Federico said something like, we're not here for any promises, come back when you've got something concrete. I'm like, who does he think he's talking to? And then Gennaro says something to the effect of, you talk to me like you don't know who the fuck I am. And he says something like, when I make promises, I keep them. And then he does. He's got their coke shipment now. And then we also know on the back end of things, from his perspective, he's also got the Russian from last week, and he's also assuming that Shiro is dead. So he feels like everything's falling into place for him right now. And the episode ends with Shiro returning, and he's back. He's back at back. Like he's back at the spot. There's a nice little scene where he says, he sees this kid and he buys cigarettes off of him. He says, "You remind me of me," and it makes me think back to the movie. Which, I mean, you all should have watched the movie, but you should think back to that too, because we saw him literally like that in the movie. So that was pretty cool. And seeing him walk back in the rain, it was a dope shot. So it was a really entertaining episode, kind of standard fare, like I've always said about this show, you only have good episodes and great episodes. There is not a single bad episode of this show. I'd put this one in, like a good episode. It was solid. It was a good watch. I enjoyed it. Nothing really dramatic happened, but it was a good watch. Oh, the pee scene. I call this guy the peen guy in my notes, even though it's probably about the same amount of characters as the gentleman, which is what he calls himself. But obviously, for me, that's a callback to season 2 when Salvatore Conte did that to somebody in the bathroom of a club or something like that. And Shiro comes in the scene. You're like, yo, that's like probably one of my favorite episodes of the series, because in my head, I call it Chiro's no good, really bad day or something, something like that. Because when he goes to Spain, he has like the worst day ever. But yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes. But and lastly, Jenny is cleared of having killed his father because Azura and their lawyer meet with the one guy who's been trying to get Jenny since the beginning of season 4. And he's essentially like, I found Pietro Savastano's body in Emma's casket, and a close range gunshot to the head. Your husband's a murderer. And the lawyer's like, you're going off the word of Patricia Santore or something. I think her name was something like that. I can't remember her last name. But you're going off the word of Patricia. We don't know where she is. She's like an unreliable person here. And they're like, no, she's reliable. We got yada yada. And he's like, well, what date did this happen? And basically, they say that this happened on I think the date they gave was February 24th, something like that. And she's like, yeah, that might be the day Pietro Savastano died, but it's also the day that Pietro Savastano was born. And then they run off like all these receipts that they have to prove that Gennaro was in Rome with her while she was giving birth to little Pietro, so he couldn't have been there to kill his father. And that scene I thought was interesting because later Gennaro is meeting with Azura and he sees Pietro sleep in the bed and everything, and they have a conversation about how he can't have a home in a world like that. And it was interesting conversation. He says, you're just like your father, all this kind of stuff, right? But in that conversation, he says they owe all of this to Patrizia. And I'm trying to kind of like wrap my head around this whole story with Patrizia and what she said when she was interrogated. Because if you recall season 4, she's having a conversation with the authorities. They ask about Jenny and then they cut. So we don't see what she says, if anything. Later, he asked her about it. She says, they didn't even mention you, which was ridiculous. Like, why would you say that? Because obviously they would mention him. So like, I felt at the time when he killed her, it was because he didn't believe her that he wasn't mentioned. Because why? Like I feel like he looked at that as like, okay, she must have said something because that's the most ridiculous fucking lie. There's no way they didn't ask about me, so she must be lying. But then also, there was already a plan to kill them before they arrived, so it couldn't have been like in response to him asking if she said anything about him, because they already clearly planned on killing those two in the first place, because they killed the brother on the airplane. Like, they had that already planned out too. So it makes me wonder if it really was just him just being ruthless and tying up loose ends, regardless of whether or not they deserved it, which would be really cold-blooded. But when he says that, we owe this to her, it makes me wonder are we meant to believe that she purposely gave false information so that essentially she could have been like, here, I've offered you information on Gennaro Savastano. Now I'm out. I gave you some info. I snitched. Now I'm out. She tells him, like, I didn't say anything because for her, on her side of it, she gave them bad info that she knew would be easily refuted. Like, he did that, knowing that he couldn't have done it because he was there with his son. So like, is that what we were kind of supposed to get from this, and why he says they owe everything to her because she gave information that she knew could easily be refuted? But I feel like that the show kind of handled this a little bit wonky. Like, it's not super clear, and that's one of the only things that I think is over the course of the show, what will ultimately be 5 seasons. The only thing that I'm going to be able to look at and be like, I didn't really like how they handled the whole did Patricia talk or not, and how did that tie into essentially Jenny getting cleared. It was a little wonky, but I think that's what we're supposed to get from that. But if you have a clearer idea of how this all played out, please drop in the comments. Let me know, because you'll quickly learn I fuck up a lot of stuff here. So a couple of little thoughts real quick before I wrap up. I already talked about the scene from the Variety article. I already talked about the callback to Conte. I already talked about the introduction of the sister seeming to mirror when Apollonia was introduced in Godfather 2. So I already had that in there. So another thing I kind of want to talk about as I don't even really want to call it a con, but like, again, when I look back on the series, something that I'm going to be a little bit critical on is the constant cycling in and out of ancillary characters. And, in the first, I'd say maybe like 3 seasons, we didn't get too much of that. But in 4 and 5, 4 and in 5 so far, we've already gotten a lot of like new characters introduced, and it makes it tough to gain any kind of real connection to characters other than Gennaro, other than the ones that we are already familiar with, like Gennaro and Shiro, which is really the only ones. I mean, we got I forget his name, but a couple of other familiar faces, but by and large, his crew or any of the major characters' crews just seem to kind of cycle in and out. And we got this introduction of this guy, the gentleman or whatever. We got this introduction of Federico, and they present the gentleman as if like this is somebody who's like a long established big deal guy, but we haven't heard or seen anything from him in the series prior, and that makes it a little bit harder to buy. When we spent so much time with these people and these crews, the fact that this guy who's this powerful exists and hasn't been mentioned before is a little weird. And I just wish they gave us more time with some of these characters to kind of maybe see them grow into somebody that we could feel any kind of way about. The last person they did that with was Enzo. And I feel like Enzo was probably introduced in like, what was it, season 3 maybe? I think Enzo was introduced. So a teeny tiny little bit of a criticism, but not anything that changes how I feel about the show. And then my last thought is that the music, again, remains dope on this show. I really liked whatever song that was playing during the raid. It was something called, somebody posted it in Reddit. So if you're a fan of this show, I recommend you join the Gomorrah Reddit subreddit page on Reddit. Really good information there, good conversation. Everyone seems to have a pretty strong knowledge of the show. But someone mentioned in there, they posted a link to the song, and it was called like Back in the Business or something like that. But I thought that was a really cool song. I really liked that song. I really liked the one that was playing at the beginning of episode 1 when they were trying to find Gennaro and they were pulling over all these people who looked like him. Whatever song that was, I thought was really good too. So the music continues to be dope. The visuals continue to be dope. And even their, non-major event having episodes are still really good to watch. So I enjoyed this episode. I'll be back for season 4, for episode 4. And then, like I said, you can check for episodes 5 and 6, probably Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, which would be, because I don't know when you guys are going to watch this video. So this week probably isn't very descriptive. But then again, if you're watching it way later, 5 and 6 are probably already on the page. So if you're watching this one currently, then I'll see you probably Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'm going to record, I'm going to rewatch episode 4 because now I have a version with better subtitles. I'm going to rewatch episode 4 and I'm going to get that video up as well. So I'll see you guys Tuesday or Wednesday for episodes 5 and 6. Peace.